every year, and so this is kind of a birthday without alcohol. Yeah, that's what it is. So look at it as, you know, like their birthday today. Those from Amsterdam, Ajax became 114 years today. They are formed in 1900. That's just a fun fact. In 1891, Great Britain got connected to mainland Europe by telephone. That's a fun fact. And I was thinking of Wells Fargo because of our Consul General. I'm going to introduce him right away because Wells and Fargo met in 1852 and formed a shipping and a banking company. That's Wells Fargo. But our Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, his family tree goes way beyond that. So, without further ado, Hugo van Meyenveld.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. And it is a pleasure for me to host you all over here. It's an overwhelming number of people who, of course, the Dutch among us were full awake, I think, at 4 o'clock this night because of the biorhythm difference. So you could use breakfast over here, I guess. And all the others, well, the big conferences have not started yet, so what else to do then? Come to us. And normally I would say when there is normal weather, and not as beautiful as today, but then there would be a big fog over here. And then us San Franciscans would say the rest of the US is isolated. It's like the British joke, continent isolated when there was fog. But here, I would say I'm proud also to have you as people from the game industry. My own son-in-law to be is a big gamer, but at the same time he has studied his doctorship, so he's becoming a doctor. And he has already made the connection between gaming and his all his specialties as a doctor. So I think I've practiced in the Netherlands, in Utrecht, all these serious gaming, and I was impressed of the combination of both. So here we have some marvelous future, and I'm staying with you guys. Normally I open and walk away, but this time I will not be arrogant. I'm all ears. And I pass on the floor back to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think the Netherlands does a great job in this, and I'm listening if I'm true. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, without further ado, because we're to be a little bit far in the program, the Senior Vice President, Global Marketing and Publishing of Electronic Arts, the one and only Bryan Neider. It's his third time. He skipped last year. We forgive him. But what I like about Bryan, he's always giving a broad perspective and not just electronic arts, even though they're the biggest. Bryan, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, this is a gorgeous facility. Thank you for being here. Is this a spectacular day? Yes. It's like this every day in California for those of you who are visiting. And also, you know, when I go through this, I've been in the industry for nearly 25 years, 30 counting clients I had when I was in public accounting. And I don't think there's a more exciting time to be in interactive gaming and a more exciting industry to be in. We touch just about everything in terms of technology, artificial intelligence, the clicker. So what I'm going to do is walk through kind of an overview of EA a little bit so you know exactly what our company is like and where we fit in the market overall. And then I'll show a quick video that covers all sorts of games. So everything from console games to mobile games to free-to-play games. You get an idea of what that looks like. And then I went back and looked at the first presentation I did for the Dutch consulate about 5 years ago, 2009, and tried to compare and contrast what's changed. What did I predict? Was I accurate back then about where I thought things were going or not? If I was not accurate, I did not put it in this presentation. So with that, let me give you a quick overview. We were founded in 1982. We were a venture-backed startup. Kleiner Perkins was one of our funding VCs. We have about 9,000 full-time employees, peaking sometimes with 2,000 to 3,000 temporary testers, language localization. We have offices in roughly 30+ countries, Annual revenue last fiscal year was not quite $4 billion. Right now, for the last calendar year, we're number one on Gen 4 consoles, so the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. And number one PC game publisher, and roughly 40% of our revenue is derived from digital downloads or digital sales. And here are some of the brands: Battlefield, Need for Speed, FIFA, sports titles, Madden, Sims, Plants vs. Zombies, and some technology we spend a lot of time investing in. Frostbite engine, which is certainly part and parcel of our first-person shooters. And also most of our other teams are using that. And then a sports engine, which is Ignite, and Origin, which is a e-commerce solution for people purchasing PC games and staying in touch with what other franchises are doing. So with that, hopefully the video will run here. It did not run. Let me go back. You know, it wouldn't be a software company if there wasn't a glitch.
It must be Apple, though.
It's Apple. It's Apple's fault. We'll see it visually. We won't. We'll imagine what this. There we go. So that was a rough overview of some of the games. Titanfall was the last one up there before FIFA that just shipped about a week ago from Respawn. Hopefully some of you are playing that. The last racing game, I don't know if you noticed that, that was a mobile, that was a game for Android and iOS. It just shows you the quality of visuals that you can actually get on a phone these days, or an iPad is pretty impressive. So a little bit about us. We named a new CEO, Andrew Wilson. He used to be president of EA Sports in September. We have roughly on, like I said, Gen 4 consoles, roughly a 35% share. And you know, some of the data here, just if you take a look at this, things that have been exploding are the time people spend playing games. And 18 billion minutes played in FIFA, the last version of FIFA. And you start looking to the numbers from a global standpoint, and the adoption of gaming as a lifestyle and entertainment medium. You know, we only dreamed about having that kind of reach 10 years ago, 20 years ago. When EA went public, we were one of the first gaming companies to go public, certainly Atari before that, in the US, we had a very difficult time positioning our company because people thought games were toys. They really didn't understand technology. They thought, well, maybe we're a distribution company because we had a sales team. Trying to educate the market 25 years ago about what interactive gaming was a huge part of our messaging, trying to explain the technology and the way that software works. And you see where it's come in that time to be, you know, 1.4 billion races on Christmas Day alone. These numbers are staggering. Again, we're not unique to this. So King.com, others, the kind of traction they're getting is really impressive. And I think, you know, that's great news for the industry overall, and certainly we want to be, and we believe we're a key player in that. But again, for an industry overall, from a global standpoint, it's amazing what's happened in roughly the last 5 years in terms of market adoption of interactive gaming as an entertainment medium. So here's kind of a recap going back to 2009. You know, one of the hottest companies at that time was Zynga. Right now, you know, King getting ready for their IPO. Hottest platform back then was the Wii. Now the highest growth rate in the market has been on smart devices. And then you see what's happening with the Gen 4. The visuals and quality of that and the adoption of this new hardware from Sony and Microsoft has been absolutely impressive. One of the hottest games, you know, last then, Grand Theft Auto 4 and Flippy Bird. I mean, anybody play that before they took it down? It's pretty amazing the run-up of that and how popular that was for a very short period of time. And the thing is, it was a global phenomenon, right? It wasn't just in North America, it wasn't just Europe, it was around the world, which is pretty impressive. And you know, you look at the industry overall, from 2008 and 9, $42 billion industry. By 2016, we're expecting to have almost doubled. And you can see the graphic here of what's happening between package and digital. And a lot of that growth, you know, comparing to box office for theatrical movie releases or home video, you can see that certainly as an industry in 2014, we're projecting the interactive market to be larger than any one of those individual traditional entertainment mediums. And again, we only dreamed about this when we went public years ago. And you see what's happened in the last 5 years from 42 billion to over 70 billion. And the growth is continuing unabated. You know, harnessing the power of next-gen hardware, you know, roughly, you know, the installed base, this is one of the fastest launches of console hardware ever, and one of the smoothest. Very impressive launch. Some great titles that have come out, certainly from EA. This is our list of lineups. You can see titles from competitors. Some really amazing content and what they're able to do these days. Multiplayer, global reach, visuals, audio, storytelling has become much more compelling. You know, as a medium in terms of entertaining people, it just keeps getting better and better. And certainly, the processing power of these devices allows us to give consumers what they want. And they want deep interactive experiences. They want deep story. You know, they want to have a lot of variety. And I think, you know, the hardware from Sony and Microsoft has certainly allowed game makers to be able to deliver that kind of content to customers. Mobile market, while it says some consolidating, it's not that there's mergers and acquisitions, but essentially, you know, the top 5, top 10 are continuing to gain momentum. And certainly you see this when you go to the App Store or you look at to purchase an Android title. The number of titles is daunting that are listed. And so certainly the cream is rising to the top in terms of quality of mobile games, either for iOS or Android. You know, King has roughly a $500 million offering. Supercell had a $1.5 billion investment. Very high profile transactions in this space that are taking place now on mobile. Clash of Clans and Candy Crush doing about $1 billion in revenue. I think the top 3 titles on mobile do about $750 million a year, which is pretty amazing. You think about movies, you know, what's the greatest grossing movie of all time? I think it was Titanic, in terms of all mediums. You know, not catalog if you look at Star Wars as a franchise, but as an individual movie, and they're doing $750 million annually. Pretty impressive. And then you get the surprise hits like Flappy Birds. And again, mobile is interesting. People are spending more time on their tablets playing games than they are doing anything else. And just this last year, before that, it was they spent more time playing games on their phone than texting or talking. And it was only about a percentage point difference this last year where I believe texting outpaced gaming by 1 percentage point. So you can see that in terms of time spent with smart devices, people are spending more time playing games across all devices than anything else, which is pretty amazing. Players spending there you go. You know, so it's pretty amazing that the installed base is roughly 2 billion in terms of smart devices worldwide. Television has about a 3.7 billion unit installed base. And you think about television as a medium for delivering content. If we say it really started in earnest probably in the 1950s, so roughly 65 years to get to 3.7 billion. And if we say smart devices are roughly 5, 6, 7 years old, and they're already at 2 billion, they will probably have, we'll probably have an installed base for smart devices close to television in probably one fifth of the amount of time it took. So in terms of global adoption, that's pretty amazing. 60% of users, smart devices access games daily. That's pretty amazing. So if you think about that, 2 billion, 60% of the audience, 1.2 billion people are accessing and playing games every day. And the average annual spending per user across all content types, whether it's games or music, are roughly $100. Again, as a medium and a device, it's pretty impressive what's happened and how it's changed the landscape. And it's a worldwide industry. I would say the console business for the longest time was very concentrated in primarily Japan, North America, and Europe. And those markets are still incredibly important, obviously, for gaming overall. But what smart devices have been able to do is to make this a global reach. And it's really opened up interactive entertainment to audiences we would not have been able to access in the past and bring great games and great storytelling to those markets. And the games growth annually in emerging markets, and I use that loosely because I would not consider China an emerging market. So, but in terms of this definition, roughly 30% of annual growth in those markets. Current share of overall gaming, roughly 50% of it is in Asia. And you think 5 years back, that was not the case. And we can't forget about other markets which are, in Eastern Europe, South America, Middle East, and Africa. And we've done things like changing billing capability. We've found that markets open up and we find a way to actually reach them. They want to be entertained as much as anyone, whether it's on their phone, PC, or in some cases, consoles. So I left PC out specifically, but PC and being able to access games on a PC and on the web are absolutely critical. Another part of the growth in the market overall. It's been a little unheralded, but the PC market has been making a very nice comeback in terms of gameplay and access for people wanting to be entertained with a free-to-play business model. Other emerging tech, wearable tech, the Apple's CarPlay, smart TV, all of this stuff. EA's philosophy has always been to be platform agnostic and try to develop content where we think consumers are going to be. And every one of these things may have an opportunity for those of you making games and creating apps to be able to reach consumers in different ways. And so, I mentioned this in the very beginning. When I think about this industry and what I've seen, transpire over the last 25 years, it just keeps getting better. I will say, though, it is also more complex and much more technical, and being able to make all these devices work seamlessly with one another, because consumers have a higher expectation of what the entertainment experience is going to look like. But again, in terms of growing a market, we couldn't be in a better place. It is really, they talk about the golden age of writing for television and cable and movies these days. In terms of interactive gaming, this really is the golden age. And all of you have an opportunity to really set that tone of what it's going to be like going forward with your own companies that you're working at. But certainly as an industry overall, you saw that earlier graph about growth. It doesn't get much better than this. I think people would be envious if they saw the kind of growth numbers in our industry. It's pretty spectacular. And the key is people love stories. They want to be entertained. And we always felt this way when I first started EA and first started in the industry. People always had that dream of their ability to tell stories with gaming, with technology in a way that you couldn't get in other mediums. And we're finally seeing technology sort of catching up with that vision and that dream. And really, it's up to a lot of you to be able to tell that story going forward. So I think, again, as an industry, and certainly for EA, there isn't a more exciting time that I've seen in terms of our opportunity overall. And so with that change, I talked about some of the technology transitions. You take a look at some things that are taking place. The Gen 4 launch was, again, having gone through multiple hardware launches, it was certainly one of the smoothest I've seen and one of the best adopted by consumers probably since the first PlayStation launch, and you can go back to Sega and Nintendo. Right? It was a very smooth launch with a very, very powerful hardware from both Sony and Microsoft. Next is mobile. You take a look at what's happening there in terms of being able to manage that. It is changing some of the way we structure our development teams, as well as marketing and data and analytics. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, about how mobile in general is changing product management expertise, about managing the game and also markets. And a live service model here, when we look at emerging markets, is absolutely required, right? These are really live services, whether you're on console or PC or a smart device. Really, we are launching live services now. We see that happening. Certainly people still play games in single player mode, but multiplayer and being online all the time is really what consumers are expecting. So one of the big things that's happened in the last couple of years is being able to have a long-term plan around big data, predictive analytics, being able to fine-tune games, improve gameplay based on how consumers are interacting with the product. So for us, a lot of it was early on with data management going into diagnostics and then predicting where people want to take it. And lastly, being prescriptive about being able to anticipate and prepare for ever-evolving gaming experiences. Again, this is kind of a vision of what it could look like, of using data and consumer information to continue to fine-tune that experience. If people are having a difficult, a couple of examples, if they're having a very difficult time in one particular part of a game, if we know that, we can do things to be able to help them through it, or decide that, that is way too difficult and a lot of people are quitting when it gets to that level, so maybe we need to fine-tune that level. How do we make sure the audience is having the kind of experience that is entertaining and enjoyable for them? So being able to use data and analytics to be able to modify gameplay and improve gameplay is absolutely critical going forward. And in mobile, this is the data and analytics that people are running on mobile is where a lot of that time is spent, but also applying that to PC, free-to-play, and console is critical in the long run, and we have a long-term roadmap about how we want to be able to do that to improve gamers' experiences. Intersection of art and science. I've always been amazed, having talked with a lot of other software companies that are not in the games business, understanding how they run software development. I can't think of another industry except for maybe animation such as Pixar, where you have to marry technical engineers, right brain and left brain, with artists. Right? And that marriage of engineering with art is sort of a miracle when games come together, because you're really dealing with people from very radically different disciplines. And I think that's one thing that's unique and I think spectacular about our industry is that marriage between art and technology and finding how to put something together that people enjoy. I will say early days in the industry, I think there was a general tendency, if consumers, at that time gamers, couldn't figure out how to get it into a game, they didn't deserve to play my game. Right? If they weren't smart enough to figure out how to go through 18 different steps to actually get in the game, they are not worthy to play my game. Right? And this is going back 20 plus years when it was very engineering centric. And I think what we have now, and as the industry and certainly as we've evolved, is that marriage of having a great consumer experience along with great technology is where you have sort of the golden intersection of those two things. And in some ways, I think Apple kind of set the tone for a lot of us in many industries, because their user interface, whether it starts with opening the box, is an experience. Right? They've thought it through, how are you going to react to it? And I think that taught a lot of industries, certainly our industry as well, that you can make it better and not sacrifice a lot of the hard technology that's behind the scenes. And I think that's what's really unique, is making more of that invisible to people so they can spend more time enjoying the game and the experience overall. And this is where we spend a lot of our time, is thinking about how to marry these two together in a way that delivers the best possible experience for consumers. And using that data and insights, there's a lot of noise. There's so much data being created out of games from any company, EA certainly, but like anyone else, and being able to filter that in giving it back to the business to be able to understand how to keep improving the overall experience for consumers. And this is a big part of what we focus on behind in the operations part of the business. How do we give this feedback back to the game teams and back into marketing to keep adjusting and fine-tuning the overall process? And I know a lot of other companies are doing the exact same thing. And this changes the business culture, right? If you think about 5 years ago, it was primarily you ship the game and people play the game and you find out whether they liked it, and then you start the development cycle for the next couple of years on a traditional console game. It's much faster and much more iterative now. Even if it's a console game, right? Adjusting levels, downloadable content, new maps, things like that. all of that is really taking this information and trying to fine-tune the experience for consumers. So I think, overall, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A. So in conclusion, the games market has shifted quite a bit in the last 5 years. I think it's become absolutely far more global. The growth is faster than I had expected. I think than most of us had expected, with both iOS, Android, and the, I think, very smooth rollout of new Gen 4 hardware. Next-gen consoles, mobile, emerging markets, the growth really is going to be, I think, similar in terms of installed base to something you see like with television. So again, if we think there are about 2 billion users today, and there are 3.7 billion people with televisions, our goal should be having the same, if not greater, penetration than TV in the future. Right? And we can do that, because a lot of people have a phone, but they may not have a television. You start thinking about other markets. So I think the opportunity for us is to set that bar very high, and I think it's very achievable. And again, a lot of what we're doing is transforming our development and business culture to be much more real-time, much more responsive to consumer feedback in a way that keeps delivering great consumer experiences. So in conclusion, having been in the industry longer than maybe several of you are old, again, I don't think there's been a better time to be in interactive gaming. It's pretty exciting. And again, it doesn't mean it's easy. New technology and wrestling with technology and making it consumer friendly is not an easy thing to do. But I think we have an obligation to our audiences to be able to find the way to deliver that great experience in a way that's easy for them to get into, to play, and then to enjoy. So with that, I will take any questions from the audience. No questions.
So let's do 5 minutes Q&A right now.
Okay.
Then we'll do the elevator pitches.
Yes.
Then we have another 10 minutes Q&A. You will stay for about half an hour.
I'm staying here
or as long as you want, guys.
As long as the food's still here, I'm here.
Go ahead. So first of all, I would like to give you something. Some people have it as their only book because they go digital. But this is about salt and sweet. It's about the Dutch and the water. And the jenever natuurlijk. Sorry, that's Dutch yet. So please.
Thank you very much.
As a token of our appreciation.
Thank you very, very much.
And thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So, questions?
Yes.
You were describing some of these challenges as you move to big data to improve your business. What kind of challenges are you facing there? What kind of technology vendors or technology innovations are you looking for to help them?
That's a great question. So you may have seen a lot of articles. I think there's sort of been this fad of big data. And so everybody feels a need to understand all the data they have. It's like most things. There's the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of it's going to be the most meaningful data. And then discerning what is the key data to track and monitor, because you can't cover it all. And some of it is just noise. So I think for us, it's going through that process of really discerning what is information that we can act on versus just data that is noise. So that's where we spend a lot of our time. And there's certainly probably 5 to 10 key metrics in the industry that everyone tracks around mobile and console. How long are people in the game? How long do they play? What's the average revenue per user? Things like that are fairly standard. But it's really that play balance data, getting to the right stuff to be able to act on that. So I think it's trying to discern information that we can actually act on versus just munging all sorts of data points. And I know everyone struggles with that. I spoke at a data conference probably about a month ago. It's common in every industry. People feel this need to be dealing with it when in fact, they're starting to winnow it down to the 20% that matters the most. Yes?
Bryan, I had the pleasure of meeting the amazing co-founder, Trip Hawkins, a while ago.
Yes.
And if there's something that resonates in your story today and what he said back then, and what I didn't realize before is how EA has pioneered gaming as an art form and game developers as artists. But if I look at EA now, I would say the art that you guys are making is like a symphony orchestra, while these indie game developers are, they're rock stars. How is EA dealing with, the change in the market right now?
That's a great question. It certainly changes like the advent of smart devices and, whether it's Google Glass or something else, certainly has an impact on engineering and artists of how they create for whoever's going to purchase that product. I think we do a pretty good job of trying to balance that, because I think we do have teams that are rock stars. I think the idea of kind of the orchestra being big and slow and maybe only old people like me go watch it, I think that our dev teams would probably take exception to that. I think they view themselves as rock stars in the medium that they're working in. So whether or not it's a mobile game or a console game like FIFA, you know, the FIFA guys, the complexity of that and what they try to do to improve that experience is pretty mind-boggling. Just to maybe go down that one for a second. You know, to have a game that can have 22 unique players playing from anywhere in the world on a console and make it feel real-time is very, very hard. And the teams to be able to deliver that and do little things like how you touch the ball, the way the grass looks. You know, they take a lot of pride in making it feel as real as it can for their players. So they do feel like that they are rock stars in making that happen, because it is cutting edge in the entertainment experience. And listen, I think rock stars from the indie part, it's great for an industry. I mean, I'm proud of our industry to have companies like King, Candy Crush, and others. It's great for all of us, and it sets a bar for EA as well. There's an article I was reading about leadership on a flight back the other day, and it was interesting because they were talking about competition. And they said there's a form of competition where your competitor, the better they are, sort of this like Maslow's hierarchy of competition leadership, the better you will be. That people are in the game for that sport, of having somebody worthy of competition. And I think one thing that's been consistent about EA, we are a competitive company. And when somebody has success like that, it's a bar for us to go target. And I think that's healthy for any industry. So I welcome great indies. I think it's really good. They change the medium, they add new things. But our guys are doing a lot of similar work, and they take an enormous amount of pride of a lot of that balance and fine-tuning they put into product. And that was a very long answer to a short question. Sorry. Thank you. Sure. Other questions?
Well,
Yes.
About the FIFA thing, right? You just said like they try to do as much as possible to make it most like realistic as possible. Is it like who takes it? Who has like the general direction for that game? Is it who says like, oh, we want to make it as realistic as possible or as most fun as possible? Because it's not always the same.
I think so. That's a great question. So maybe realism versus fun. That's a balance that they try to strive to get that right balance.
Yeah.
So too real sometimes is not fun.
Hmm.
Right? So they try to find the balance that when you're playing, it feels real to the experience it should be, but it still is very enjoyable and fun.
Yeah.
So they don't over-index on real to the point, I can remember we had this space game years ago. This is probably 15 years ago. And I swear the travel in space was almost real time. Like it took me 10 minutes to get to the next planet. Okay, that's not very much fun, right? So in terms of play balance, they compress that down so you can get from planet to planet much faster. Yeah. So we would not want real space-time travel in a game. So I think they do a very good job of trying to balance those two. They take enormous user feedback for the features they're going to put into each game.
Yeah, okay. Because like with Pro Evolution Soccer, they had like 5 years ago, it was very arcadey, very fast-paced, and they changed it around to be more like you guys, it seems. Does it feel like a victory?
You know, I will say this. I think the team is extremely proud of what they've done with FIFA over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, in fact, we had a presentation from that team about a week ago. I think they have the right mindset, which is like any team, you can't rest on your laurels. So I think that they are always thinking of the next great thing, and they want to keep that edge and stay hungry. So I don't think they look at it like they've won and it's over. I think they look at it like somebody is on our heels and they want to, you know, beat us, and we want to keep playing really hard. So I think the team has the right kind of attitude.
Okay.
Yeah. So shall